Florian, and today I'm going to keep you company as we explore the underground level. It's quite an interesting take on the monument because we are going to visit the backstage, the ancient backstage, where all the magic of the show is. Okay. As we walk, a little recommendation, let's try to stay close together because the monument is very crowded. Once we reach the underground it's going to be better, but for now maybe memorize someone in the room. Okay, it's a good start. We can start our visit first.
Close it properly, nice.
So famous and there are lots of mythology around this mountain. So I will just tell you what's true and what's false about the people who are trying to look for the real Colosseum behind them. Myth that of course was based after the many movies and Hollywood products that we saw about the Colosseum. So, starting with the name, we already have the first misconception because I don't know that Colosseum is not the real name of the city. It's a nickname that related to long after the Roman Empire ending. It's very Middle Age, in a completely different era. And the reason behind this name, we're going to solve the mystery at the end of the video. Not spoil it for now. Let's go back to the original name, the official one, which was Flavian Amphilia. This is the real name. If we analyze the name and analyze the expression, we get to know a lot about it even before it is named. For example, the word amphitheater. It's a Greek word for a Roman invention. The Colosseum is a giant theater, that means that it's a place for shows, for entertainment. The amphitheater literally means double theater, and that's because the Roman theater doubles in size the Greek one. Usually the ancient Greek theater were built in semicircular shape, while the Colosseum is the result of two semicircles joined together into an elliptical shape. That's why amphitheater. The remaining part of the name, Flavian, refers directly to the dynasty of emperors that ordered the destruction of the church. It's a now they were the second Roman dynasty, the Roman Empire, and they were successful. So a very short one between them. Start. Doesn't work. Let's reach outside and then.
Ok, start. Ça reste vraiment 1% de ta vie.
Difficult part of the visit. One of them, that's Flavian, was his name, is the man behind this video. The first emperor who wanted a permanent entertaining area for the side of the theater temporary. Colosseum is the first one built in stone and concrete. After one important war, he conquered Jerusalem and he decided to invest the whole loot into the theater's construction. The war started in 72 AD, okay? And the conclusion pretty much was in 80 AD, so you understand to beat all of this pretty much 8 years, okay? However, Vespasian died before seeing his big project completed, so his two sons in 80 AD jumped into the game and took the responsibility of the Colosseum. The first one, the eldest, his name was Titus. Titus opened the Colosseum to the citizens by organizing a legendary event, something that never happened again in the theater's history. 100 days of games, non-stop. They killed a ridiculous amount of animals just for the sake of entertainment. Okay? Then after Titus we have the younger brother, Domitian. He became emperor in 81 AD, so as you can see Titus had a very short reign, then we have Domitian. Domitian is a bit the protagonist of our history today because he's the one behind the backstage. He took charge of the architecture, expanding his father's project and adding 2 layers. The highest one, that's not visible from here, we are going to see it at the end of the visit, and the lowest one, the underground, in order to get a backstage. Something to make the shows even more spectacular, okay? You can start going down the stairs, don't worry, I'm right behind you.
It's chilly down here.
I guess we go down the lighted path. I guess we go down the lit path.
This is the behind the scenes. So this part of the theater wasn't allowed to spectators or visitors like that. It was a place for workers. And we get a hint of that by looking, for example, at the original architecture that's quite rustic. We have exposed stones, but mostly the original floor that you can see there, but we are going to make it more and more as we go to the underground. This is the typical Roman opus spicatum, that's the technique name, but the translation is like fishbone pattern, so as you can see, it's quite self-explanatory. And this is the type of floor that Romans considered to be resistant yet quite ugly. You know, it was the basic one, the entry-level one. Of course, for us now, the perspective is completely different, but you have to imagine that they used to be the giant, intricate marble patterned one. They were very precious, not too important for important rooms and palace. So this floor here is like the basic one, that's why we find it here. We are in the behind the scenes. And in fact, this very hallway was the same one that gladiators used to use 2,000 years ago to reach the arena center and start their job, okay? It used to be much longer because it was an underground passage, a link between the theater and a very important building right outside the theater's area that's partially visible still nowadays. And it's the Ludus Magnus. In this case, translation is like big gym, something like that, okay? Because it was the gladiator school, the place where they used to learn the gladiatory art, but it was also a prison. Gladiators were prisoners, slaves. So they lived in captivity in a district that was just for them. And to reach the Colosseum and start the matches, they needed to use this very same underground passage, okay? At some point in the 19th century, they closed the passage in order to use it for the construction of the sewer system of the modern city. But that's why nowadays it's not workable anymore. So now we are going to watch a video together in which we are going to see the reconstruction of this tunnel, but also of the school, and we are going to meet also some gladiators categories, okay? Enjoy the video. The animals used to be exotic, as we see in movies, for example, lions, tigers, cheetahs, but also domestic, roosters and rabbits as well, because the whole point of the game is to hunt. Okay? The problem with movies is that we got very confused watching them, because in movies we see gladiators fighting against animals, but they actually merged two separate shows. The gladiator show was a thing, and the animal one was completely different. And in fact, the animal one took place in the morning, the gladiator one in the evening. It was the last in the timeline inside the Colosseum. The gladiators weren't allowed to fight against animals because their matches were organized by many rules. They were allowed only to fight one among themselves, and to be more specific, 1 versus 1 in specific categories. The name you read on the screen, those were the roles that they used to play, almost like playing a character. We're going to understand it a little better in a minute. For hunting animals, they had professional hunters that were even paid to do the job, okay, completely different from gladiators. In this case, by looking at the picture, we can even tell how the match ended, because we have some clues all around. For example, the symbol in the center, it's a Greek letter, starting for the word death, Thanatos in ancient. While very close to the hunter side, we have the V for victory. Okay, this mosaic is very interesting also because it witnesses the presence of tigers in the first century Rome. Okay, clearly a tiger. Okay. Back onto gladiators, which is the most interesting argument that for them it was the same for 10,000 years ago, and in fact it was the last show in the way for the most exciting one. Here in the underground we have an exhibition replica of armor and weapons that belong to the gladiators in the 6th century pretty much. They made them by taking inspiration on the one that they found in Pompeii. That's not working. Okay, it's on. Now it's working? No? No, it's not
Like
working.
something here, otherwise.
Okay, so maybe try and change the headphones, because usually the problem is,
Oh.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Let me know if the problem persists. I'm going to, okay. No, I told you that in the underground it's a little bit better, the situation. The radio is mostly for the first part of the itinerary. Okay, so I was saying that they made those replica by taking inspiration on the real ones, the one that they found in Pompeii. We may not think about it, but the Pompeii disaster, so the eruption of the volcano that actually sealed the city, the history, and the Colosseum opening are pretty much contemporary, because the disaster it's in 79 AD. The Colosseum opening is the following year, 81 AD, so 91 AD. So we are in the same era, okay? Gladiators were famous, they were in Pompeii also, they were famous just like modern sports stars. The thing is that they didn't share our football players, for example, the social condition, okay? They had no freedom, and freedom is a key value to Roman society. It defines what you are, and it places you in the social pyramid. So they lived a controversial situation. On one hand, the fame, on the other hand, slavery. That's why it wasn't desirable to be a gladiator, okay? Their life was pretty much ruled by a man called Lanista. Lanista, it's not the name, it's the job that he used to do. It's the manager, so the man that actually owns and trains the gladiators. And they also had a referee in the matches, who was the first character we met in the video, the one with the white dress, okay? So, since there's a referee, there are a lot of rules, but the most important one is the complementarity between the warrior. That's the criteria behind the couple making, okay? So they paired the warriors according to a certain balance between their abilities, okay? In this case, we are going to understand it by analyzing these two. They had the Retiarius and the Secutor. They were very common in the 1st century. A warrior playing the Retiarius was only allowed to fight against a warrior playing the Secutor, because it's due to their weapons, okay? The Retiarius has the net, and in fact it takes the name from the net. Retis, it's net in Latin, that's why it was like the net holder, the translation would be. And he also has the trident, because you have to imagine him like a representation of Neptune, the sea god. They love to recreate mythological episodes through the matches, okay? On the opposite side, his natural enemy, only opponent, was the Secutor, that in English would be something like the follower, something like that. Because the characteristic of this warrior was the movement, the dynamic. He has a very light equipment, as you can see. The Secutor has a completely smooth helmet without feathers, without decoration, and it's strategically designed like that in order to not get trapped inside the net of the Retiarius, okay? That's why they fight together, and that's why, for example, the Retiarius wasn't allowed to fight against the Provocator, which is a different, to provoke, it's a different typology, and as you can see, it has a very loud equipment, okay? So they bred them together like this, because the show needs to be entertaining. We have to remember constantly that we are visiting a giant mass entertainment wall. So to entertain the public was the main goal of the whole operation. And that's why, for example, another myth that we have about Colosseum is that in every match, one of the two must die. It wasn't like that because it was boring. Okay, imagine you were a spectator, no? In the first century, you came to the theater, the show starts, and then after 1 minute, one of the two dies. It's very boring to watch it. So they try to make the show challenging and to protect the gladiators as they could, because they were athletes. So an investment. It wasn't that convenient, you know, to kill a good warrior in every match. They were an investment in time and money. Okay. Of course, they died a lot because they got wounded during matches. The most common cause of death among gladiators was infection due to the different wounds. Okay. Before introducing you to another couple, I want to show you this very interesting marble piece that comes directly from the benches all around the arena where the people used to sit, because they were made of marble. We're going to see them at the end of the visit. And it's interesting because since the spectators spent the whole day inside the theater, they left graffitis and engravings on the benches while they watched these different shows, okay? And in this case, we have the privilege of looking at those very two warriors fighting, but from a first century spectator's perspective. He drew what he was watching, no, in that moment. Retiarius versus Secutor. It's very easy to recognize the net, for example. Okay. Below we have the first show in the morning with the possible animals that we couldn't find here in the Colosseum. We have the wild ones and also the domestic one, the little rabbit. Okay, poor thing. Okay. On the opposite side, we have other warriors, other examples that were visible in the arena at that time. And in this case, the theme is a little bit different, because we saw mythology on that side with Retiarius and Secutor, and here, through the matches, they love to celebrate another theme that was very, very celebrated in the city, and I'm referring to the empire's greatness. The gladiators' matches were a way to celebrate and remember important battles, historical episodes that made the empire. Okay? In this case, these two represent the East and the West. We have the Oriental soldier named after his motherland. His name is Traex, because if you have to imagine, it was like representing a defeated population. He comes from Tracia. Tracia is a region that was conquered by the Roman Empire under the Emperor Trajan. It's the region that nowadays would be something like in between Bulgaria and Greece, okay, the Balkanic area. So he's representing a defeated population in the arena. He's dressed like an Oriental soldier with a specific equipment, and he also has the specific sword. That's this one, the bent one, like this, completely different from the Roman one. The technical name for the sword is sica, and it's very interesting because from the word sica in Italian comes the word sicario, which means assassin, hitman, okay? Because this sword is very effective from the back but not from the front, that's why, okay? On the opposite side, we have his natural enemy, the Roman soldier, a warrior playing the Roman soldier. He's dressed like a Roman legionary, and he even has the specific Roman sword that was used also in real life, in the military campaign and in the army. The Roman sword is very different, it's short and straight, okay, from the medieval ones, for example, and it's named Gladio. It's a weapon that gave the name to gladiators as a category, okay? So now, we can reach, by working, we are going to reach the heart of the structure.
So the soldiers or the prisoners, were they like snatched off the street, or did they commit crimes and then became like, where did they get them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Sometimes they were war prisoners, so especially during the empire, the years when the empire extended a lot of conquests, they bring back, of course, the soldiers, the prisoners from the lands, and then made them gladiators in Rome, for example. Okay, but they could be also slaves. Criminals, they were punished in the Colosseum. I think some of them maybe had the possibility to become gladiators, but it depended on what they did. Okay, so they were basically war prisoners or slaves. Okay. So if you listen closely, you can hear people working above us. Okay, because we are underneath the stage, underneath the ending point for our visit, and we are exploring the Colosseum from the workers' perspective. Imagine that we are the workers of the Colosseum, above us gladiators fighting and people shouting from the bench. Not a very lucky condition for us, we are going to understand why in a minute, but just to give you an idea how we are exploring the theater. This is the stage. It's a replica, of course, because the original one was made in wood as well, and wood is a very fragile material, it's very rare to have ancient wood. With the exception of Pompeii, of course. In Rome it's different. So you have to imagine that nowadays we see a portion, but back then it used to cover the whole exposed area all the way across to the opposite side. So the sky wasn't visible from here, okay? And the first system they came up with, when I say first, I mean the 8081, so the big inauguration here, was a dismountable stage system. They could mount and dismount the stage according to the shows and thanks to the wooden pillars. And you have to imagine that underneath the stage, it was entirely empty. Because to see the walls and the corridors that surround us now, we have to wait for Domitian in 81, when the backstage construction started. Okay, so it's the ideal scenario to organize a naval battle, because we have a dismountable stage and an empty space underneath it to float. Okay, so the naval battle it's very fascinating, of course, but it's very controversial as well, because we are pretty much sure that they organized naval battle in the city. In the theater, we don't know. We have chronicles. They are not very clear, but we have them. On the other hand, during excavation, archaeologists, they found little to no evidences of that. Okay, so we don't know. We have many doubts on the shape and the form of those naval battles. We are sure of one thing: they were nothing like the ones we saw in Gladiator 2. I don't know if you saw the movie, okay? But in the movie, we basically see this giant, for someone that maybe haven't seen it yet, there's this giant scene with giant ships and sharks inside the theater. No sharks inside the theater. I know that the idea is fascinating, but we have to remember that we are in the 1st century. How did they even transport them? You know, it's very hard to imagine. And for the giant ship, it's pretty much the same thing, because now that you are here, you can tell with your own eyes that the dimension of the theater, the space is not that much, actually, okay? We're talking about 2 or 3 meters of water maximum, even considering that this is a replica, because the original stage used to be 3 meters lower than this one. I'm going to show you at the end where it was, okay, because we have traces of that. So we have to imagine something smaller if we want to be historically accurate, okay? So small boats with 1 person, 2 people, something like that, or again, mythological reenactments. People dressed as mermaids and tritons, recreating mythological episodes, something like that, okay, rather than actual giant naval battles. This situation, even hypothetical, stopped completely in 81, because when Domitian became emperor, he ordered the construction of everything that's around us in this moment, so the walls and the corridor, and the space was no longer empty, so no longer floatable, okay, and the arena became permanent, so it was no longer dismountable. Domitian did that in order, as we mentioned before, to get a backstage, a place to install the special effect machine, the elevator system. That's where represented in the movie, it's visible in the movie, for example. So it was like a static system, 28 elevators placed, 14 on this side and 14 on the opposite, to make stuff appear to the surface. It was a surprise effect for the spectators on the benches. Gladiators, animals, and scenography, okay? I'm going to show you now the replica of one of the many elevators that were installed here, okay? So we are going to understand a little bit how these function.
dove devo?
E l'ascensore.
No, se l'est fa brutto.
Ja.
And 4 below, where you see the wheel in the center. Okay. So it means that to move the totality of them, they needed 224 coordinates. Imagine almost 300 of us working underneath here just to make the whole show machine function. And try to imagine the working condition. Because we are underneath a wooden ceiling, without light, without oxygen, and sharing space with wild animals. So they were very unhealthy working conditions. The evidences that we have of the stage machinery of the whole the special effects system are the holes in the ground. Underneath that gallery there were plenty, but don't worry because even in the next one we are visiting there will be more and more. But this one I'm showing you now, it's the most interesting. It's a very interesting stone because it still has the housing hole in the center. So you have to imagine the machine going inside that hole to anchor to the floor. But we have the original metal frame. So the frame you see there, it's very ancient. It's there from the 1st century. Okay. And it's very interesting because it has engraved the letter number 8, the Roman number, the B with the 3 eyes. It's kind of difficult to spot it, so you have to trust me on this one, but it's there, okay? When it rains, usually it's more visible. So the Roman number 8, the elevators, the machines, were numbered, so they could move them at the same time, or by calling the number they needed. It's a direction system, just like in a modern theater, with the exception that this one is 2,000 years old. Okay?
This is the shop. This is the shop.
There you are. Stop for humanity.
So we are in the center of the whole structure. We're in the center of the whole theater. This is like the Colosseum's belly because we're in the center but on the ground level. So we have to continue imagining, no, above us the wooden ceiling, continuing all the way across. And here in the center they installed a different stage machinery from the one we saw on the sides, because on the sides we saw elevators with vertical traction for animals and gladiators. Here in the center they installed the changing background system. Different shows requires different backgrounds. So it's another machine. It has horizontal traction. Okay, you have to imagine a system of sliding platform, and on top of each platform they mounted the scenography they needed according to the show. So by pulling back the machine, they were able to slide up the platform like this, diagonally to the surface. Once you reach the surface, the platform went back in line with the rest of the wooden stage. It's like stage engineering, okay, something like that. We're going to see the model once we reach the opposite side of the exhibition. An example that I always give, you have to imagine something like the children's pop-up book. So something that you open and the background is standing like still, okay? The only evidence that we have of the system here, it's on the wall, not on the ground this time. As you can see on the wall we have some stones that are kind of incoherent with the rest of the brickwork, the big one. They are in a diagonal direction because those were the rails for the platform to slide up, like this, okay? In the center. Okay, let's continue working. We're about to reach the opposite side, but before, stop at the end of the whole piece I want to show you. where the original stage was. So once you get here, you're going to notice a series of marble shelves on my left.
Oh wow, that's great. That's crazy.
Exactly. Those were the pedestals for the original arena or stage. It's the same thing to rest on. Okay, so if we make a comparison with the modern one, we can see that it's lower, no? So we have to imagine that that would be the original stage level, but also the hypothetical water level in case of naval battles.
Great.
It's a very small amount of water. For sure, it's not enough for a giant ship or
Sure,
even a shark.
Sure, yeah. A canoe. So the whole myth that they fought the animals is a lie. They weren't allowed to.
They weren't allowed to, no, because they were at least needed to fight with humans
Okay.
in order to show off their abilities, you know. That they had animals in the theater, yes, it's true. It's just that it was a different game. It wasn't with the gladiators that they had the animals. They had animals with the hunters.
Okay. Hunter and a prey.
Yes. Animals were a great way to entertain people.
Sure.
Because imagine that in the first century it wasn't that common for a Roman citizen to know the sheep, the lion, the giraffe, or anything.
Right.
So they were very entertained by it for the cat. Now we are about to step another corridor. I think I should go to the next one. The one with the video and then the video. By working along the opposite of the weeks, we reach the opposite side of the river. Then at the end of the corridor, I'm going to show you there what I mean to easier to We said at the beginning that the Colosseum has an elliptical shape. As we can see, this is a very ugly yet useful map of the Colosseum. And the ellipse is always divided in four by two axes, a shorter one and a longer one. Okay. We walked along the longer one. So according to you, where did our visit start? When we were already in the underground, on top or below? Where are we? And where we were? Where were we?
On top.
On top we started or we ended?
We started.
No. No, I know it's not easy. Don't worry. I ask you because I love to have a dialogue, not a monologue. So that's why it's not easy. But there's a little hint to understand it. Here, as you can see, there's a gallery, and this is the gladiator secret passage, the tunnel that they use to reach the arena. So we started here, and now we are here. Okay. So we walk along the long axis, as I mentioned before. So since everything in Roman society has a meaning and a purpose, they were very organized. They placed strategical entrances on these four focal points. On the longer axis, they placed entrances for people taking part in the games. The workers, slaves, gladiators, animals. Us in this case, okay? So we walked in this direction, and on the surface the situation is identical. In correspondence of these 2 points, we have two monumental arches that were used by the people taking part in the games and that are part of the theatrical representation. They have different meanings. Now we are standing underneath the Triumph Gate for winners. Okay. On the opposite side, we have, of course, the Death Gate for losers. Okay. I'm sorry to tell you that we are going to end our visit underneath the Death Gate that's over there, right? Through the window, you can see the ending point of our visit. Okay. So we say that was metaphorical, no? In some cases it was real, of course, but it was pretty much metaphorical. It's just the humiliation, no, of having to use that gate to get out of the theater at the end of the match because you lost the game, for example. Okay, it's dedicated to Libitina, which was the goddess of death in ancient Rome. The real name is Porta Libitinaria, okay, for her. On the shorter axis, we have entrances for VIPs, aristocracy, okay? That in the Roman society means senators, magistrates, and of course, His Majesty the Emperor with the rest of the family. The remaining entrances, that are the arches that are all around the monument, that we see once we approach the Colosseum, were for everybody else to get inside, for common citizens. So if you think about it, after 2000 years, we still use the same entrances that the Romans used to use to get inside the Colosseum. At least for them was free. Nowadays, we pay the ticket. Okay. Here in the underground, we have I want to show in particular this display that it's about food, because not just the tickets were free, also the food. Emperors gave to the population food and tickets for free. It's part, of course, of a bigger political strategy that goes by the Roman motto Panem et Circensem. If you want, you can read it there. But basically the meaning is panem, bread, and circensem is circus, okay? So I give you food, I entertain you, so you don't have to think, okay? It's a totalitarian government strategy that is still now very used nowadays if you think about it, just with different shapes and forms. An example that I can give you, there's a very famous movie that talks about this situation, The Hunger Games. I'm sure you know it, the novel, the movie, very interesting. But for example, in the history, the main nation is named after the motto I just told you. It's Panem, okay? Because if you think about it, the situation is the same. We have a game, through a game, entertaining a population while there's misery, all around. So that's a nod to Roman history. But I think that the author was quite passionate about Roman civilization and history, because even the characters have names after, for example, there's a character named Seneca. Seneca is one of the biggest Latin writers of all time. So I think it's very interesting to know it's a way to reactualize Roman history, okay? So we have fruit seeds, chicken balls, small dishes, because people used to eat on the benches while they watch the games. Before climbing the stairs, I want to show you the last display. Because it's the display with the model of the platform system. So once you're done with it, we are going to go closer to the display and have a look. In the meantime, you have some questions. If you want, I can answer. If I know the answer, of course.
What's written on them?
Those are, remember the one we saw before with the Retiarius and Secutor? Those are other fragments of seeds, because we don't have many actually, with some engravings on top. They are very interesting. We can find different staff names. For example, this one is very beautiful. We have an adult holding hand with a child, for example. That gives us another interesting information, the fact that childs were allowed to those games, okay? There's an exception, a significant exception, and it has to do with the show that I'm mentioning now for the first time, the public executions, okay? So that was the only shows where, of course, children were not allowed to, okay? Used to occupy the middle part, because we saw in the morning hunting games, then in the middle we had public execution, then the last show was the gladiator one, okay? The public execution, what they did was they basically set the punishment into history or mythology. They recreate a scene. That's why I was going to tell you, watching together the replica, because here in this case we see the platform sliding up with a tree on top, and then below there's the following one with another tree. Of course, they used to reconstruct nature for hunting games, trying to match the environment with the animal, but they used this system also for public executions in order to reconstruct mythology, history, episodes according to the situation they needed. I know that for us it's horrible to think something about that, but we have to imagine that Colosseum is the biggest theater that we know of from the ancient world. So for them, for the emperors, was a way to gain respect. We are talking about a capacity of spectators that could go from 50,000 up to 80,000. So try to imagine the meaning of being punished in front of that many people. They had a very different conception of violence. It was also a ritual for them. For us, of course, it's horrible and very something like that needs to be done clearly, okay? So now we can leave behind the worker's perspective, and by climbing the stairs we are going to reach the spectator's one. So we are going to change completely our point of view on the monument. Take your time with the stairs because they're quite steep.
Grazie.
Es que cariño, viene aquí otra vez.
No chyba wiesz, celowo. By każdy wytykał te, wiesz.
What's that? I think so, yeah. We gotta walk out onto the wood, I think.
Yes, correct.
Andiamo. We were just down there.
Allez, venez. Yo, regarde plutôt. Salut.
So we finally reached the arena and the spectators' perspective. And as spectators, of course, we are not supposed to see the exposed backstage, remember? So you have to imagine this part being entirely covered by the wooden stage over there, okay? Wooden stage that we often call arena as well, they are the same thing. And the origin of the word arena is very
You go look at the screen.
Latin and the Colosseum history, and it's interesting because nowadays we still use the word arena to identify the stage. And that's because on top of the wooden floor, they used to have a thick sand layer. And sand in Latin is arena. That's why still nowadays we call arena stadium. So as we walk towards the arena, we are surrounded by the different grades, the levels that were inside the Colosseum where the people used to sit. They are 5, but it's very hard to distinguish them nowadays because this is just a skeleton of how the building used to look. And that's because in Middle Age, this place got slowly abandoned after the fall of the empire, and it became a quarry something that happens all the time when you're in the city in Rome. The seats were made of marble. Marble is a very valuable material. They took it away and the structure collapsed on itself. That's why it's looking like that, okay? The portion that is in front of us is a replica construction that they did in the 30s. But I have to say that it's not very, it's not very historically accurate because they made it meshing up together marble pieces coming from different areas, okay? They did it during the fascism, during the regime. It was a period, a very critic period for Italy, and a period in which they used the Roman history as a propaganda tool. So they invested a lot into the reconstruction, but they didn't care a lot about the archaeological or historical perspective, okay? So did the Romans get to choose their seats according to you?
No.
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 The answer is no. Absolutely not. They had a system, of course, because they are very organized. I'm sure you understand by now.
Lie back down? I know. Lie back down. He wasn't in trouble.
Oradan mı çekeyim?
Yeah.
So, we were saying they had a system. The system was regulated by the ticket. So you have to imagine a very modern ticket, just made in wood or ceramics, so not paper, just like ours. But on the ticket they had the sector, the row, and the specific seat. Okay, so it was very modern. The thing is that nowadays usually the more you pay, the better are your seats in the stadiums or concerts like that. Back then the ticket was free, so the criteria is completely different. It's a social class. The more civil rights you have, the better were your seats. And that's why aristocracy used to sit in the first row, because it's the best one. It was named podium, it's the most important one. So here we would have found senators, magistrates, and emperor. So another big difference with movies where we see the emperor sitting like super high. It wasn't like that, because if you sit there you have a great view of the city, but you're not aware of anything that's happening on the arena. Okay, Colosseum is 55 meters high. It's impossible to have a good vision from there. Okay, so as we go up, the social class goes down. We have aristocracy, then knights, very important in Roman society, because Roman society it's a military one. So if you could own and maintain a horse, you were crucial to the survival of the society, okay? Then we have middle class, and then poor people, even poorer people, and on the last row, the attic, added by Domitian, you remember as well with the underground, first seat ever, women, of course, okay? I know. They were there, up there, the common women, the citizens, because the aristocratic one, we have an exception. The aristocratic ones, they were allowed to sit next to their husbands in the first row, okay? As you can see, I don't know if you know this, but actually the attic is still standing just on one side of the Colosseum. On the opposite side, it's completely missing, and that's why the theater nowadays is asymmetrical. But if you think about it, it's the image that we have in our minds, so in postcards and photos, the asymmetrical theater. But actually, it wasn't like that. It was like the one you saw in the video, so a full circle. What happened? An earthquake in Middle Age. In 1348, it destroyed the southern side of the Colosseum. That's why nowadays it's asymmetrical. Okay. And what about the emperor? Where did he used to sit, according to you, if you were the emperor? So we know the row, yes, very close to the arena, of course, because he had the last word on the match, so we needed to see everything, okay? But where do we place him? We don't know. In the center, or in the middle, yes. Right. You sit in the middle, but there's an open debate about it, because of course archaeologists, they don't agree even on that. Okay. We don't know if you used to sit in the middle of the northern side, the one with still the attic, or the southern one. Okay. The majority of them, they think that you used to sit there, center southern side, for a very practical reason. Southern side is the closest to Palatine Hill that you visit, I think, because I saw the stickers. But for the one didn't know, actually Palatine Hill was where the emperor used to live, okay? Where the big royal palace was. Actually the word Palatine comes from Palatium, that's palace in English. Okay, so he lived there and it made more sense for him just to cross the street and come to see the show. Also for safety Oh my god. And I'm here blabbling about the importance of the historical perspective. Oh my god.
Can we do that?
Yeah, of course. Only if you send me a video. I'm joking. Okay, so yeah, the visit was to avoid that, okay? No, I think it's a great movie. I understand. It's just that romance is a thing and the historical accuracy is another thing. It's my profession, so okay. So I was saying the emperor in the center side, so southern side, because also for safety reasons, so you need to make a very small itinerary to get here to be safe, okay? So the tour actually ends here. You can stay a little bit longer on the arena if you want to take some picture, but I just wanted to tell you that with your ticket you can visit the second level as well to do the maximum stuff if you want. By walking through that gate, that's the gate behind the seats, okay? To the left, and then to the left again you will find the stairs, okay? Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed the tour. Thank you.
Grazie mille.
Grazie a voi. Can I ask you just the
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Grazie.
I wish I had more time. Like when you come in